Zach?
Well, I thought Sarah said it didn't matter because
It doesn't matter. All right, just kidding.
Nice for the beginning.
We do a little transition in the video. If you want to watch us on YouTube and see the video of us recording, it is on YouTube now, thanks to Sarah, because she's awesome.
Thanks, Sarah. You're
so
awesome.
They're posted in
Good job.
part 1, part 2s. All right, so I'm going to talk about
I didn't get a drum roll.
I'll do the next.
No playing favorites,
I'm gonna end up
Sarah.
in a Russian prison, Sarah. Okay. On April 17th, 1917, at a meeting of the Vienna Society for Psychiatry and Neurology,
Oh,
Dr. Konstantin von Economo described a new disease.
that's quite a name.
You know? Encephalitis lethargica.
Mm.
Shortly thereafter, he published his first article on this disease, and he described this as a sleeping sickness.
Mm.
Have you seen that new Netflix movie about oh crud, I'm not gonna remember the name now, where the sleep,
Sarah will look it up for you.
where he's the god of sleep?
No, I've not.
What?
Sandman?
Yes, Sandman.
Oh,
I've not seen it.
Sandman. So
It's a Neil Gaiman
Right.
story, right?
right, I did watch all of that. Full disclosure, and that's
Is it good?
it was so
It's on my list.
it starts a little
love
slow
Griner.
and then it picks up, but I actually enjoy, like, I'm 10 out of 10 no, but it's like a 6 out of 10 for me, where like I want to kind of see what more time and money into
So for
into
me,
it
it'd be
do.
a 3 out of 5.
probably okay.
Up to 5.
So I was
Yes.
I was
10 is
looking
too many.
I was looking up I think I was looking at the actors in it, and something came up about sleeping sickness, and I was like, wait, this is like a real thing. Okay.
Well, can you just like give me the elevator summary of The Sandman since I haven't watched it or
No,
read the book?
no.
Because I'm trying to like link what you're saying.
He's, like the god of sleep.
So he makes people sleep with his powers.
Yes, and there's a lot of control. If you think about when you sleep, a lot happens in their hopes, dreams, fears, your worst nightmares. It can drive people to do things in the living world. Yeah. There you go.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Right.
It's Metallica.
Enter Sandman.
Okay. So that's how I got here.
Okay. I love the entry point.
Sleeping sickness. So this usually had a prolonged course. So I have to tell you, I have 12 different tabs up because I had to look up words and what they meant. So when I come across a word that I did not know, I'm going to read you the definition because I felt like I learned a lot.
I love expanding my
All right.
vocab.
Yeah.
I was like, I feel like I need to know what this word means. Okay. So headache and malaise. Do you know what malaise means?
Yeah, a general malay.
Yes, a general malaise, how we tend to hear it. So this is discomfort, illness, or unease where we can't quite identify where it's coming from. So I didn't like actually fully know that whole definition, that like not knowing where it's
I
coming
have
from.
that sometimes.
So it's followed by somnolence. Can I tell you how much I
Sleep.
love this word, somnolence? So this is a state of drowsiness or strong desire to fall asleep. So think of like drowsiness. That would probably be a good way.
I
of
experience that once in a while.
somnolence.
And
We get really like
it's really interesting because I don't experience it very often, but sometimes I'm like, I have to fall asleep right now.
I do that all the time.
Not me. It's
I'm
very
in
rare.
somnolence.
It's almost like a narcolepsy kind of thing.
Where yeah, you get like
You just
your
have
head
to.
nods. Sometimes a good example if
Mhm.
people drive too long
Yeah.
and they get the like that kind of feeling. Right. It is
Yeah.
dangerous. Don't do that.
No, I've been in a car with somebody that fell asleep while we were driving.
Oh,
Don't do that either.
But that was bad when we both fell asleep. Luckily, it turned out okay. It was just a little scrape, but
had that
So,
a few times.
It was often
oh, we
associated.
were both asleep.
It was often associated with delirium, for which the patient couldn't be or could be easily awakened. So that was kind of the thing, is like they're not unconscious, like you would be having this and like you could be kind of startled out of it. The state could rapidly lead to death.
What?
Right. Or could persist for long periods of
How could that
time.
lead to
I'm going to
death?
get there. I know this is what freaked me out. It's like, this is a
Right.
legit thing that
I feel like
happened.
nappy is gonna kill me.
And
Blood sugar issues.
it could progress to
Ugh.
coma, or you could recover completely.
I don't want coma. I want to either die or live.
Kill me or let me live.
Yeah, the coma thing freaks me out.
Mhm.
Okay.
Future
So
topic.
That's scary.
right. So this was typically accompanied by paralysis in your cranial nerves, especially those affecting the eyes. So the eyes did this thing. I looked this up, ptosis. The eyes, like, actually kind of roll up, and they almost like a seizure type response.
Interesting.
Vanaconomo concluded that he believed the disease was an encephalitis with variability relating to how it localized in the body. So it could present in some different ways.
Isn't encephalitis like the shrinking of the brain?
So that's why it got labeled that, is that they really tied it in with something happening in the brain. So the disease began appearing and I just want to say, I paid to get this article.
Good for you.
So you guys are getting this. This actual
Make sure you
research
cancel
article.
your subscription.
I paid for just the article.
I'm still struggling to get my New York Times canceled when I subscribe just to get access to
I
one
hate
article.
that. You know, I opened that in the history.com one. I'm like, F you. I don't want your info. I'll find it somewhere else. So
But sometimes it's like the one thing I'm like, I
know.
must have it.
well, the problem is that they have such good writers that you're like,
Yeah.
ooh, I like the flow of this. And then you're like, F you. Okay. Here we go. The disease began appearing frequently throughout the world. So again, this like 1920, 1924 is when it started appearing. Official figures showing peaks about 10,000 cases between 1920 and 1924, with a mortality of 500,000 cases during the entire epidemic. Mortality, 500,000 people died from this up to 1940. I've never heard of this in my entire
No.
life before. And I'm like,
So
why?
interesting.
Okay, so, and there's been sporadic reports of encephalitis lethargica cases since then, but not in an epidemic sense like it did during that 1920, 1940.
I mean, what was going on then that made that happen, do you think?
We'll talk a little bit
Okay.
about that. There's still a lot of unknowns, though. It is there's still a lot of not answers that you're gonna not feel okay
Perfect.
about.
I'm okay with
So-
non-closure.
So during this epidemic period, the signs and symptoms rapidly increased to where all of a sudden they had 28 types of it. Signs and symptoms encompassing virtually every neurological system, including some that originated with insomnia, and then others were actually the opposite of that, where they would have more behavioral type responses. Okay. So this New York City neurologist during this period had really this huge goal of trying to cure this and find like the antidote basically to solve what this was. It was such a big deal, which made me think about COVID.
Oh,
Like, because we had a stint of a thing and it became the big focus. And it's like, I'm kind of curious, like, what is the time span, and will it just go away at some point where we barely hear about it and it's forgotten about completely?
probably.
Yeah.
Right.
hopefully.
Right. Okay. So they said there could be some overdiagnosis during this period too, though, because like having so many types makes it harder to diagnose.
Yeah.
Even after 100 years, many issues still, we don't know. They're still struggling to answer what causes it, how is it transmitted, and could an epidemic happen again?
Is it still a diagnosis then today?
It is still a diagnosis today. And there are still people who get the diagnosis, but it's they're spread out. Like they're not an
Like, what are the
epidemic.
symptoms?
I'm going to get you there.
Okay.
I swear I will get you there. It is now argued that the crucial involvement of the role of the intracellular inclusion body. So all things are connected. when we talked about Robin Williams. Lewy bodies?
Lewy body syndrome.
In the pathogenesis of idiopathic Parkinson's disease have originated from the findings of the same pathology in patients with encephalitis lethargica. So it's something that they feel is connected in the brain.
Okay.
So related, we don't know for sure if that was this and this is the same as that or not. Again, widely because of how the presentation can show up. But again, we see that with COVID. Over time, different variations show up, so the presentation gets wider. So like being 100 years later, does it look so much wider because we weren't there in the moment and this is what symptoms were present at the time, and it just got bigger as more were coming out. Okay. Presentation and course. This is the part you want. Encephalitis lethargica, sleep sickness, is a highly polymorphic disease, which polymorphic presenting in different ways, that tends to appear in epidemic outbreaks with signs and symptoms fluctuating to some degree from one epidemic to another. The most common: headache, slight sore throat.
Oh my God, I just had that.
Chilly sensations, general weakness.
I have it.
Mild gastrointestinal disturbances. It sounds like COVID.
Well, no, I just had that in my big cold last week.
Okay. The prominent signs are lethargy, so very
No, I didn't really have that.
sleepiness or stupor.
I always have that.
Both at the onset and through the early stages of the disease. The lethargy.
I think it's lethargy.
Lethargy.
There he is.
There's Obi.
Oh,
Hi, Obi.
there's Obi.
We missed you, bud. This
He's like, there you all are. I've been wondering.
this
Cat napping.
lethargy may be more apparent than real, like, so they're conscious and they're able to be like snapped out of it. They can become alert and sensible. Okay, so in contrast, a person may exhibit insomnia, where if you think about like someone who's like unconscious or sleeping, they may be hard to wake up, that sort of thing. Like this person is actually going to snap out of it like really quickly. They're not actually sleeping. So they call it like a fake, or sorry, not fake, pseudo somnolence. So
It's a
you do
different
wake
kind
up.
of state.
Right. Sometimes patients experience delirium, paralysis, most often associated with their cranial nerves and their eyes. They get abnormalities, facial paralysis, masticatory paralysis. I had to look that one up. That one is, let me
Like
see
you
here.
can't chew.
Yes, I was about to say, I think that was one with chewing. Dysphagia. Dysphagia is swallowing difficulties. And then what was the other one? Swallowing, and sometimes paralysis of their limbs.
So there's something, neurocognitive about this,
Right.
for sure.
So some of the patients develop Parkinson's rigidity, catatonic stupor.
I hate that word stupor.
I know, it's not great. Some patients,
I know, it makes me think of stupid. Like,
Right.
people aren't stupid because they're having a
No.
thing going on.
they could have, I agree with that. They could have hyperkinetic phenomenon such as myoclonius.
What's that?
Right.
What's
you go.
myoclonius?
I looked it up.
Okay.
So
This is one of your tabs.
it is one of my tabs. I'm going back and forth. Okay, so this is
Will
the
there be a
part.
quiz later?
This is a rare form. So myoclonia is a rare form of an epilepsy that tends to impact the eyes and eyelids. So it's like a seizure type.
So they like go
Facial
back, maybe?
twitching. It says it tends to go upward, like looking up. And some patients experience sensory disturbances, including pain, headache, facial, muscular. Isolated cases also talk about ataxia. Let me tell you. Described, so that's poor muscle control or involuntary movements with their body. Okay. So the mortality rates for encephalitis varied based on time and geography. So between 1919 and 1927 in New York City and England, the annual rate varied from 29% to 75% for mortality rates.
Wow, people are dying from this.
I told you 500,000 people
But like,
died.
I don't understand. Why
I
are
know.
they dying? Is it just shutting down their respiration?
So
Is it like fentanyl?
they said it wasn't considered to be contagious. However, there are some well-researched instances because like this was all over the news then. And researchers were on it, just like they're on it about COVID, right? So they did find that there were cases in
Oh my
which
God, Obi is in bliss right now.
and getting all the cuddles. So there were cases that it did spread from person to person. And there were cases where somebody passed it on to their newborn. Right. So
So it's not just a mental health
no,
thing, like
no.
it's a virus or something. Yeah.
Which is the difference. I'll tell you a little bit in just a minute about one of them, but yes. So encephalitis lethargica could also be complicated by severe changes in behavior, particularly in children. So there's a picture here of a young boy who's said to have that. So his body is like flexed and like, so they're saying he's like really rigid here, leaning forward, open mouth. And I watched a video of this and like the boy was actually sitting there and like his hand was twitching, but he held that like very rigid posture, mouth open. Yeah, it looked like a seizure. Selective mutism was also identified as something that could happen. I know I would show you the video, but honestly, it's just shock bait. That's what it is. Okay. So encephalitic lethargica in children, von Economos said, and so some of this, remember, 1931 here. So it's hard when I read this because I want to like just be like, well, this sounds like you're just trying to explain away naughty children, like children doing bad things. So I'll read it and you take your opinion for what it may. But the video I saw isn't what is described here, actually. So he said, we see here how organic encephalitis lesions in the brain may produce in previously normal individuals as strange alterations of personality, which cannot be otherwise described than that of a moral insanity or erratic imbecility. His words, not mine. He continues to note that these children, quote, annoy strangers on the street, pluck their clothing, make faces at them, abuse them. They tramp, beg, lie, steal, write on walls, squander all the money they can lay their hands on in sweets, cannot be controlled at school, run away from home and spend their time at the cinema and in the streets.
How dare you watch a film?
Indulge in sexual misbehavior of every kind. And make other dangerous acts, except in the very young. Oh, sorry. End of quote.
Because they probably can't get out of the house to the cinema.
So, I mean,
There's
think
a lot of cultural
part,
stuff here.
right?
Sure.
The first part talking about change in behavior, I could see that, and change in personality, sure. The rest of that like didn't align with anything else I read, so I just wanted to make that clear. Like yes, we've seen things like it sounds much more like a brain or nervous disorder. He sounds
very judgy.
He sounds judgy. He's the one that did most of the research.
He hates
back
theater.
in the day.
That's clear.
He's not a theater kid.
He's making theater pathological.
Okay, so the pejorative and not good term Apache.
Oh,
right?
What?
He also used to characterize these kids, referring to wild behavior. So obviously, culturally, socially inappropriate.
Different times.
Right.
Ugh.
So that's like, take it with a grain of salt in that aspect. In the acute phase, he said it was characterized by intractable somnolence, that tiredness, which was then attributed to abnormalities in the brain. So sleep mechanisms are localized in the subcortical brain. So I looked subcortical up. Yes, I did. There it is. That's underneath the brain stem. It involves things like memory, emotion, pleasure, and hormone production. So
those are all my favorite things.
Right. So it impacts all that. So encephalitis lethargica was often complicated by lingering or permanent somatic, so physical or psychological sequela.
What's that word?
I did look that up. Hold on. I don't know where that went in my list. It didn't pull up right. I'm
Secula?
gonna have to look it up separate. Hold on. Secula.
Secula.
It's
So like
SQUI. It's interesting.
He's like eyes closed.
He's
blissed
like
out in
so
your
happy right
arms.
now. Okay, I don't have it on hand.
So cute.
He's the most adorable. For sure. Okay,
He's a
so
living stuffed animal. Is what he is. I don't know where he was.
he was
I don't think
hiding, he
I
was gone.
Nowhere. Yeah, he must have been napping downstairs.
So they said that I lose my spot. They said that it's very similar to Parkinson's.
Oh.
So what we currently understand of Parkinson's, but again, I say similar because they are not the same, or else they would probably say that. There's a
Right.
lot of research that it just it's not clear. So they call it post-encephalitic Parkinsonianism is one of the things that people say it might be, which is the rigidity, the tremor, flexed posture, the masked faces. But it is different from what we know as Parkinson's now, because the onset is below middle age. So it's usually younger
Like
kids.
That's so interesting.
Right. And actually there was a study, a large
Has to be
study
related to seizures though, right?
a large study during this, when all this was happening, which there is no foundation for, like there's no like real research, but it was done by someone during that time who said they were researching. Feels like it's linked with polio.
Oh.
So that's one thing. But so this children, symptoms lasting more than 10 years. So this, like, it's long set, in the presence of the ocular, they call it ocular gyric crisis, which is the eyes. And palilia, is that not in my list either? Hold on, I looked this one up. I need to look it up.
Palilia.
Palilia. There's a lot of L's in that. Palilia. Palilalia. So that's the delayed repetition of words and phrases. Palilalia.
Delayed repetition?
Like when you have them repeat something, there's a delay, like a lag.
Oh, got it.
So that's different than from Parkinson's as we know it now. Like that's not an issue with that. Okay. So other features include things like cranial nerve palsies. So having some sort of like seizing happen, the sleep disturbances, personality changes, and autonomic dysfunction. Okay. So prognosis, where some patients appeared to show complete recovery altogether. Others showed somatic impairments, movement disorders, or psychological impairments, behavior disorders, especially in kids. Post-encephalitic, this gets harder as there's more wine. Parkinsonianism, that's why I looked them all up ahead of time, was believed to be.
Did you practice saying them out loud?
Yes, I read them aloud and I said them. Was believed to be a sequel in up to 80% of affected individuals. So when later on in life they got diagnosed with Parkinson's, most of them were linked with having it earlier in their life. So
interesting.
One of the people that they think was impacted during this time, they thought that maybe even Hitler had this as a child, and then his presentation of symptoms later on in life were from that. And I'll talk about actually right now. I'm going to give you a real clinical vignette of someone who had this. I love vignettes. Patricia McGuire, also known as Oak Park's Illinois Sleeping Beauty. In January 1932, 27-year-old Patricia began feeling increasingly drowsy every day. She fell asleep on a train. She returned home and slumbered for 9 days straight.
She slept for 9 days straight?
And then on February 24th, she became comatose. After about 1.5 years, she began to show signs of consciousness with open eyes, alert expression, ability to respond to simple commands, although her eyes did not respond to light and she could not speak. Unfortunately, these positive signs did not last. She went back into comatose. and then she died of
Then
pneumonia.
she just died.
She died of pneumonia in
pneumonia,
1937. But that's how I'm thinking all these deaths linked with it. So most of them start with a fever as like one of the first.
Could it be
things.
comorbid stuff? You're wondering.
I mean, it sounds like it's like the body's having some sort of immunosystem response
Thing.
That's kind of what this came up to, is there's a thing happening that many, I mean, the scientists don't freaking know, I'm almost done with this whole thing and they still don't have an answer.
I
So
know if narcolepsy was a diagnosis at that time.
no, but this is ruled out from narcolepsy because
Did you all?
they
You
are,
can't die from
because,
narcolepsy.
well, and you can like wake with narcolepsy, it's like they have to be arisen from it, like they're unconscious.
How obsessed were you
They're
with
easily
My Own
awakened.
Private Idaho when that first came out?
What?
My Own Private Idaho.
What? Is she saying words?
Is that a song? I think that's. a
Were you
song.
obsessed with something you want to tell us about?
Never mind.
I think it's a song.
No, it's a fucking movie.
What about Idaho?
I feel like it was a song too.
No.
Ooh, fight.
Oh yeah,
fight.
it's a B-52 song.
Thank you. You're
What's
yelling
it
at
called? Yeah, you are yelling.
Because I'm angry because we're talking about my old love, River Phoenix.
me. But
I don't even
love-
know who that is.
Okay, I got you a shirt.
I wear it all the time. I just wore it last night.
I never saw the movie though. I need to see that. I need to watch that movie.
Yeah, you do.
River Phoenix is hot. I was hot back in the day.
When he was alive, he was super hot.
Her brain was removed after her death and revealed an atrophied
He
frontal
was
lobe.
narcoleptic in the movie. That's the link.
She
Okay.
doesn't have narcolepsy, which was believed to confirm a diagnosis of encephalitis lethargica. So her brain was atrophied. It showed physical damage. Okay. So this
That
is
was heavy.
the cat was heavy. This is the video of the boy. He's just sitting like that, but it's very disturbing to watch it.
Yeah, it seems very
It's very disturbing.
exploitative.
Right. I mean, he's just sitting there, but yeah. Okay, so I'm not going to dive in huge into this because honestly, it's like 50 different possible reasons and none of them we know for why or where it comes from. Some have pointed at H1N1, like that pandemic virus being possibly linked because it impacts segments of the brain that are related. So they say technically, preventively, you could take the whatever that vaccine is for the bird flu may help,
Mhm.
but that's again loose link. There's viral studies that was looking at things like infection, like brain infection stuff. Again, nothing solid. SARS-CoV-19 infection. That one was looked at. It impacts the similar regions of the brain
It blows me
stem.
away that it's still happening.
Right.
And we haven't like
No.
connected any dots.
And that's
really.
what they like. That's what I looked also. I mean, this is actually from like a neurology website with current research. And it is just kind of like, sorry guys, we don't really know.
We tried.
And part of it being
Good luck. You could die or be totally fine or be in a coma.
right, it doesn't happen as much at all, like very sporadic, not in the same way, which is again like what happened, but there was other
That tells me there was like
Influenzas.
comorbidities or cultural things.
there were
that
other influenzas happening
not
at
ruling
that
out.
time too. So they're wondering if that made them more like susceptible to getting this, and then that potentially and they say that it's I don't know because they don't know.
Well, nobody knows.
Pandas, the
Wait, why are we bringing pandas into this shit?
pandas, which is
Oh,
the
pandas.
pandas disease,
Pandas.
is a brain disorder that's typically brought on, like most people who get that have a fever that initiates, and they have that, and then they can get sometimes like OCD symptoms from that.
Oh.
Right. So not everyone who has OCD necessarily has had it like throughout
Has
their childhood.
pandas.
Right. And vice versa. Yes.
Always pandas.
This is why I'm not spending much time on this. I know what point we are at in this night. I'm just skipping so many things here.
The
There's a
burden
really-
of going second.
If you're interested, reach out. I'll send you this article. There's a lot of interesting
No,
information.
it seems like a really long article.
There's a lot of brain damage that has been seen. So that's where it's
Exactly.
like, it's not just mental health. There is actual damage happening in the brain and in the brainstem
That's why
and the immune
I
system.
think it's kind of confusing to
Right.
probably most people, because it's like, is this just a psychological thing, or is
Right.
it like physical thing happening with the brain?
Well, because when I first started looking into it, I honestly assumed it was something like the dancing
The dancing plague.
that I did the topic on. I'm like, oh, because it's like during this one set
Or
time
the locked in
period.
syndrome, which you also did.
Right. Yeah. I'm all about these
I
old.
remember all your topics.
That's great. Don't
Steel
that's-
trap.
that's a
Yeah.
no. That's a backhanded compliment. Because what she's saying is you don't remember mine. That's what she really means right now.
That's true.
Don't believe this. This is
I just realized
sincere.
I've been out of screen this
Wow.
You see
entire
that?
time. I just moved myself back into screen.
You're literally the middle of
No,
the
I'm talking
screen.
about
I'm
that
on the
one.
side. Oh, it's like you're in the center.
No,
What are you
but I
talking
was
about?
off screen on the other
Oh,
one.
yeah. Why are you? Did it shift? It might have shifted.
I think
Okay.
Obi probably did it. Obi entered the circus.
Okay. So there's no assurance though that modern cases are identical to the ones in the 1920s. So, but there are people who still get the diagnosis, and there is a
So
diagnosis.
interesting.
Yeah, and I've read all the criteria, and it's like, okay, yeah, I could see how that could, exist. Prevention, the bird flu thing, confusing conditions. There's a lot. I
I
mean,
want to
honestly,
go to the clinic and just act like I have all these symptoms and see if I get
so
diagnosed with it.
here's the criteria: recent influenza like manifestations,
I was just sick,
somnolence. You didn't have that.
but I could fake that easily.
Wakeability, easy to rouse during that.
Yeah, well, I'd barely sleep because stress.
Ophthalmoplegia.
I'll be NOS.
I'm only saying that once. I'm not saying it again. Which is things with psychiatric changes and other conditions that have been excluded. So there's a lot of other medical conditions that can't be present, like a seizure disorder, etc.
I would be willing to potentially risk rate increase in my insurance premium to see if I could get a diagnosis of this.
There's a lot of different treatments. But again, when you don't know what you're treating, there's a lot of different treatments.
Right.
And there's no one thing that works, but a lot of people this one worked really good. But if you think one case, okay, we don't know generalizability of that.
But it be specific to each person, this treatment works for them.
Right. But we do know that it passes from mother to infant, which is interesting.
It's just so interesting.
Right,
So
right.
I mean, it could be biological, or it could be behavioral, just learn because you see your mom doing that stuff and then you're doing the stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Hard to know.
I'm just going to share one last thing. I don't have an answer for you other than it was a thing that killed 500,000 people that nobody talked about.
It's crazy.
Uh-huh.
Sweep that one under the rug.
Right. And so Oliver Sacks, Oliver Sacks, who does all the psychology book, right, where he writes in first person or not, he does subjective case studies with people and writes about it. He really, if you haven't read Oliver Sacks and you like psychology, you should definitely do that.
I hate psychology, but I'll check them out.
Do you say you hate psychology?
It's
in the book Awakenings is the book that it's
I've heard
about.
of that.
So he actually has some cases.
Or is that a Harrison Ford movie?
Maybe actually you
Maybe
might
that's where I've heard of it.
very much be right about that. So he has some actual case studies in that book about this. So if you want to read about real people's experiences,
I'll check out the Sax Man.
All right.
And the Sandman.
That's everything.
And the Sandman.
And the Candyman.
No, I will not check out that.
And don't do it.
I didn't turn on the light in my bathroom for weeks after I watched that movie. I was so terrified.
I've never seen it.
You need to watch it. I don't know if
It's
it holds
scary.
up because it was in the 90s and I was a different person, but it terrified me at the time. Yeah, I was like, no, I'm not going to the restroom. I'm not turning on the light. I'm not looking in the mirror. I am definitely not saying Candyman 3 times while looking
I'm
in
sure
the
I
mirror.
did that.
We should do that.
Oh, we
for
did
the-
it. We did
No,
it.
we
Didn't
should
I-
not.
Didn't I do it for
Okay,
the?
maybe. I would do it for the patrons, actually.
For the one in the mirror. What was that? I already forgot.
Oh my God, Obi.
What's-
Is that good?
Yes.
All right, let's
Obi.
wrap this up.
Bloody Mary.
Oh yeah, I did that in the mirror 3
That's what you
times.
did.
Yeah. I didn't die.
Steel trap. That's when
I
I'm
just
telling
did.
you.
It was good. That was sincere. That wasn't coming from a place of hate.
I wrote on my list, thank our patrons.
That's why she's like, I made a list. I was like, great. I'm not gonna read it.
We love our patrons. You pay for our wine.
Thank you.
If you want
This is
to
pleasant.
support our podcast, please be our patron on Patreon. You'll get access to exclusives.
For only $1.
It's only $1. If you haven't checked out our last episode, please do so. We talk about
The Candy Man and
fentanyl, which is totally fucked. Until next time.
Until next
I have to
time.
look at the paper.
I was gonna say you do all that without reading the paper
I know,
every
but
time.
it feels professional to have this
It looks
pad
unprofessional.
written on notebook paper.
You can't see. You don't even have your glasses on.
It's okay. I'm intuitive.
Intuitive. Until next time, make sure that you check it. So tomorrow, right, Brittney? What's tomorrow's date?
Griner.
Griner.
That's 10/25, October 25th. So if you listen to this later than tomorrow, that's fine. But go put pressure on.
Do
like
some
the
activism.
more it's
Yeah.
out there, the better.
It's definitely, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I would jump on board with that. Bring Brittney home and also always sniff your pixie
Are
stick.
you sniffing my
No.
pixie stick? I sucked on the end of that.
I know, but I'm sniffing it
Until
anyway.
next time. Have a good night's sleep.
Bye.